The transport ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a shudder that made Jin-Ho's stomach flip. Through the viewport, he could see Station Vega 7 hanging in space like a massive metal flower. This was it, the Galactic Coalition's top military academy, the place where Earth's best and would prove that humans belonged among the stars. Jin-Ho looked around at his fellow cadets. Hae-won sat nearby, her fingers dancing over a data pad as she studied alien technology specs. Min was doing push-ups in the small cargo area, his face calm and focused. Bora, the youngest at just 17, stared out the window with wide eyes. There were 25 humans total on this transport, 25 people carrying the hopes of 8 billion more back home. Docking in 5 minutes, the pilot announced. Jin-Ho stood and straightened his uniform. It was time to show the galaxy what humans could do. The docking bay was enormous. Hundreds of alien cadets moved through it like a river of strange colors and shapes. Jin-Ho saw reptilian creatures with scales that shimmered green and gold. Insect-like beings with too many legs clicked across the metal floor. Floating crystal entities hummed with inner light. They all stopped and stared when the humans walked down the ramp. A tall reptilian alien stepped forward. His scales were dark red and his eyes were cold. "I am Commander," he said in heavily accented English. "I will be your primary instructor." He looked at the humans like someone might look at a stain on their shoe. "Though I question the wisdom of wasting resources on your kind." Jin-Ho felt anger flash through him, but he kept his face neutral. Beside him, Min's jaw tightened. "Humans," continued, "are the species to join the coalition. You are technologically primitive, physically weak, mentally inferior in every measurable way." He turned to address the other alien cadets who had gathered to watch. "But the Council demands we try to educate them, so we will try." Laughter rippled through the crowd of aliens. Jin-Ho heard the clicking sounds that the insect beings made when they were amused. The crystal entities chimed like broken bells. The first week was harder than anything Jin-Ho had experienced on Earth. The training was brutal. In zero-gravity combat drills, the insect aliens moved like water, their multiple limbs giving them impossible advantages. The humans struggled, spinning awkwardly, always a step behind. During strength tests, the reptilian lifted weights that would crush a human. Min, Earth's strongest cadet, could barely manage half of what the weakest could lift. The aliens didn't even try to hide their amusement. The technology classes were worse. Though the crystal beings used mathematics that humans had only theorized about. When Hae-won asked a question about quantum processors, the instructor made a sound like breaking glass. "Your species still uses binary computation," it said. "How can you hope to understand true processing?" Every day brought new humiliation. The alien cadets started calling the humans the charity cases and the zoo animals. During meals in the massive cafeteria, the humans ate alone at tables in the corner. No one wanted to associate with them. Jin-Ho tried to stay positive. "We're learning," he told his group one night. "Every day we get a little better." "Better at being laughed at," muttered Jin, a communications specialist who had scored perfect marks on every Earth exam. Here, she struggled to even understand the alien communication protocols. But they didn't quit. Jin-Ho noticed that about his fellow humans. No matter how hard things got, they showed up the next day. Hae-won stayed up late into the night, taking apart alien devices and putting them back together, trying to understand how they worked. Min trained until his muscles screamed, developing new techniques that combined Earth martial arts with alien weapons. Bora, despite being the smallest and youngest, pushed herself harder than anyone. 3 months in, Jin-Ho's squad was assigned a tactical simulation. They had to plan an assault on a fortified position. Jin-Ho studied the terrain for hours, then proposed a flanking maneuver that would use the natural cover of a canyon system. The instructor looked at his plan for exactly 3 seconds. "Primitive thinking from a primitive species," it declared. "You attack directly, overwhelming the enemy with superior force. This is basic strategy. But if we go direct, we'll lose half our forces, Jinho argued. Then you lose them. Next group. Jinho's squad ran the simulation using the instructor's plan. They lost 60% of their forces. The squad that went after them, led by a cadet, used the same direct approach. They lost 55%. When the results posted, they was praised for being more efficient than the humans. That night Jinho lay in his bunk and stared at the ceiling. Was this a mistake? Were humans really inferior? Maybe the aliens were right. Then came the incident with Bora. She was walking back from the training facility alone when a cadet named Os cornered her. He was twice her size, with claws that could tear through steel. "I want to see something," he said. "I want to see if humans break easily." He hit her once, sending her flying into a wall. Bora tried to fight back, but it was like a child fighting an adult. When other cadets arrived, Os was standing over her unconscious body. "I barely touched it," he said, confused. "Are they all this fragile?" Bora woke up in the medical bay with a broken arm and cracked ribs. The alien doctors healed her quickly with their advanced technology. Commander came to see her. "You should file a complaint," he said, but Jinho could hear it in his voice. The commander didn't think it would matter. Bora didn't file a complaint. Instead, she challenged Os to a sanctioned duel in the combat arena. "Don't do this," Jinho told her. "He'll kill you." "Maybe," Bora said, "but at least I'll go down fighting." The arena was packed. Every cadet in the academy came to watch. The humans sat together, silent and grim. The alien cadets were excited. This would be entertainment. This would prove once and for all that humans didn't belong here. The fight lasted 90 seconds. Os was a trained warrior from a species bred for combat. Bora was a 17-year-old girl from Seoul who had never been in a real fight until 3 months ago. He knocked her down 4 times. Each time, she got back up. On the 5th knockdown, she stayed down. The alien cadets cheered and laughed. Os stood over Bora's unconscious body and raised his arms in victory. "This is what humans are," he announced. "Weak, foolish, unworthy." The laughter echoed through the arena as the humans carried Bora out. Jinho felt something break inside him, not his spirit, something else, something harder. He realized what it was as they laid Bora in the medical bay. It was his patience, his willingness to take the abuse, his hope that respect would come through quiet persistence. "No more," he said quietly. Haewon looked up from where she sat beside Bora's bed. "What?" "No more," Jinho repeated. "They want to see what humans are really capable of. Then let's show them." The humans gathered that night in their barracks, all 25 of them. Jinho stood before them, and he saw the same expression on every face. They were done being laughed at. "We're going to train harder," Jinho said. "We're going to learn everything they know and things they don't. And the next time we get a chance to prove ourselves, we're not going to waste it." "There might not be a next time," Jin said. Jinho smiled, and it wasn't a friendly smile. "Then we'll make one." The alarm that woke them 3 months later wasn't a drill. Jinho knew it immediately. Real alarms had a different sound, a different urgency. He was dressed and in the hallway in 30 seconds. Other cadets poured out of their rooms, confusion on their faces. "All cadets report to the main assembly hall," the station's computer announced. "This is not a drill. Repeat, this is not a drill." The assembly hall was chaos. Hundreds of cadets from dozens of species all talking at once. Jinho found his fellow humans and they grouped together by instinct. Commander strode onto the stage and the room fell silent. "The Ravagers have broken through our outer defenses," he announced. No preamble, no softening the blow. "They are attacking the agricultural world of Theta 9. 7 million civilians are trapped on the surface. Every available combat unit is being mobilized, including you." A murmur ran through the crowd. The Ravagers were machine intelligence from beyond known space. They didn't negotiate. They didn't take prisoners. They simply destroyed everything in their path and learned from each battle, becoming more deadly with every engagement. You will be divided into companies and deployed immediately, continued. You are cadets, not soldiers. Many of you will die, but the Council needs every body that can hold a weapon. Dismissed. Check your data pads for assignments. Jinho's pad buzzed. He looked down and felt his stomach sink. Talon Company, he read aloud. Northern Valley approach. Haewon checked her pad. Same assignment. So did Min, Bora, Jin, and the other humans. They'd all been placed in the same company. That's strange, said Dongwu, one of the quieter human cadets. Usually they mix species in combat units. They found out why when they reached the transport bay. Talon Company was what the aliens called a punishment detail. The worst missions, the most dangerous assignments, the places where survival was unlikely. And their commander was a veteran who looked at them with open contempt. You're the humans, he said. It wasn't a question. Of course they gave me the humans. He turned to address the whole company. About 60 cadets total, mostly aliens who had failed key exams or caused disciplinary problems, and 25 humans. Our mission is simple. We hold the Northern Valley while the main forces evacuate the capital city. The valley is the most likely approach for the Ravager ground forces. For how long? Asked the cadet, its mandibles clicking nervously. As long as it takes, said, which for most of you will be about an hour once they arrive. He looked directly at the humans. You will die there. Try to die quietly so you don't disturb the real soldiers. The transport to Theta 9 was a cargo hauler, cramped and uncomfortable. The alien cadets claimed the better spaces immediately, forcing the humans into a corner near the engine room where the noise was deafening. Jinho didn't complain. He gathered his people around him. This is it, he said quietly. This is our chance. Our chance to die, Jin muttered. She'd been listening to the alien cadets' conversations through the ship's communication network. They're betting on how fast we'll run. None of them think we'll last an hour. Bora, fully healed from her arena fight, cracked her knuckles. Then let's surprise them. Haewon pulled up tactical data on her pad. The Northern Valley. It's a natural, about 2 kilometers long with high ridges on both sides. Good for defense if we do it right. If we follow standard coalition doctrine, we'll get slaughtered, Jinho said. The Ravagers adapt to conventional tactics. They learn. So we don't use conventional tactics, Min said. We use human tactics. Jinho smiled. Exactly. The planet Theta 9 was beautiful. Green fields stretched to the horizon, broken by gentle rivers and forests. It looked like Earth. That made it harder somehow, knowing they were about to turn it into a battlefield. The transport dropped them at the valley's mouth. The moment Jinho stepped onto the soil, he understood why this was considered a suicide mission. The valley was a death trap, long and narrow with high walls, perfect for an ambush. The Ravagers would push through here like water through a pipe, and anyone in their way would be crushed. Unless... Jinho's mind raced. On Earth, humans had fought in valleys like this for thousands of years. Vietnam, Afghanistan, the mountain passes of ancient Greece. Humans knew how to turn terrain into a weapon. Listen up, he said, gathering the humans. We're not defending this valley. We're turning it into a killing field. He explained his plan. The aliens would set up according to standard doctrine, creating a defensive line across the valley floor. That's what the Ravagers would expect, but the humans would do something different. Haewon would modify their weapons, pushing their energy outputs higher than safety regulations allowed. Min would position close combat teams on the ridges, hidden from sensors. Bora would set traps using materials from the local environment. Dongwu would create false positions to confuse enemy targeting. Jin would handle all communications and try to hack into Ravager signals. This is insane, said a human cadet named Min. We're not trained for this kind of warfare. No, Jinho agreed. The Coalition isn't trained for it, but humans have been fighting like this since we lived in caves. Guerrilla warfare, asymmetrical combat, using everything we have because we've never been the strongest or the fastest. We've always had to be smarter. They worked through the night. The alien cadets watched them with confusion and amusement, approached Jinho at one point. "What are you doing?" "Preparing," Jinho said. "You're wasting time. Standard defensive positions would be more efficient." "Commander, with respect, standard defensive positions will get us all killed." His eyes narrowed. "You think you know better than Coalition military doctrine developed over 10,000 years. I think the Ravagers have been fighting Coalition doctrine for years and know how to beat it. They've never fought humans before." The commander stared at him for a long moment, then walked away without another word. By dawn, the valley looked different. To the aliens, it looked messy, disorganized, wrong. To Jinho, it looked like home, like every underdog fight humanity had ever won. The high ground was theirs. They were prepared. The traps were set. Heyone came to him, oil on her face from working on weapons all night. "I've pushed the output on 20 rifles to 130%. They'll overheat fast, but they'll hit harder." "Good, how about the other surprise?" She grinned. "I've been building something with spare parts from the transport. If my calculations are right, it'll work. If they're wrong, it'll explode and kill everyone within 50 meters. That's encouraging. I'm an engineer, not a miracle worker." Min reported in next. "Combat teams are positioned. We've got the high ground on both sides of the valley. If the Ravagers come through, we can hit them from above." Bora's traps were simple but effective. Pit traps covered with local vegetation. Trip wires connected to falling rocks. Improvised explosive devices made from fuel cells. Nothing high-tech. Nothing the Ravager sensors would expect. Jin had the hardest job. She had to coordinate all of this while also monitoring enemy communications and feeding information to their weapon systems. "I'm going to need stimulants to stay awake," she said. "We all are," Jinho replied. "Sleep when you're dead." "That'll be today, probably. Then we'll sleep long." The other alien cadets had stopped laughing. They watched the humans work with something that might have been respect or might have been pity. It was hard to tell. Gathered the entire company as the sun rose higher. The evacuation fleet reports the Ravagers have broken through the southern defenses. They'll be here within the hour. Our orders are to hold this valley for 24 hours to give the evacuation time to complete. 24 hours. Jinho looked at his fellow humans. They all knew what that meant. The longest anyone had held against a major Ravager assault was 6 hours, and that had been a veteran company with air support and artillery. "Everyone to your positions," ordered. He looked at Jinho. "Your unconventional preparations had better work, human." "They will," Jinho said with more confidence than he felt. The humans moved to their positions. Jinho took one last look at the valley. Somewhere out there, machines were coming to kill them. Machines that had destroyed better-armed, better-trained soldiers. Machines that learned and adapted and never stopped. Jinho smiled. "Welcome to Earth tactics," he whispered. "Let's see how you adapt to this." The first sign of the Ravagers was the silence. All the native birds stopped singing at once. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Jinho crouched behind his cover and checked his weapon for the 10th time. Around him, the humans were invisible in their positions. Ahead, across the valley floor, the alien cadets stood in their defensive line looking brave and terrified at the same time. "Movement," Jin's voice crackled in his ear. She was monitoring sensors from a hidden position. 3 kilometers out and closing fast. "I'm counting." "Oh no, I'm counting thousands." "Thousands?" Voice cut in. "That's impossible. Intelligence said hundreds at most." "Intelligence was wrong," Jin replied. I'm also picking up walker signatures, big ones, building-sized. Jinho felt his mouth go dry. This wasn't just an assault. This was an extermination force. All units prepare for contact, ordered. Jinho could hear the strain in the commander's voice. They knew they were about to die. Then they came. The Ravager drones appeared at the valley entrance like a silver wave. Each one was roughly human-sized, moving on multiple legs, bristling with weapons. Behind them, the walkers emerged, massive four-legged machines with cannons mounted on their backs. The ground shook with their footsteps. The alien cadets opened fire immediately, following their training. Energy bolts lanced across the valley. Some Ravagers fell, but more kept coming. Always more. Now, Jinho said quietly into his communicator. The humans didn't fire. They stayed hidden and waited as the Ravagers poured into the valley like water into a funnel, was screaming for them to engage, demanding to know where they were. Jinho counted silently. 100 Ravagers in the valley, 200, 500. They kept coming and the humans didn't move. The alien defensive line was being pushed back. A cadet went down, then The Ravagers were adapting to coalition tactics in real time, their movements becoming more efficient with every second. 1,000 Ravagers now packed into the valley. The walkers were entering too. Now, Jinho said again, and this time he shouted it. The valley exploded. Bora's traps activated first. The ground collapsed beneath a walker's front legs, sending it crashing down. The fall triggered more explosives buried in the pit walls. The walker disappeared in fire and smoke. Min's teams opened up from the high ground. They weren't aiming at the Ravager's armor. They were aiming at joints, sensors, communication arrays, the weak points that no one else thought to target. Ravagers began falling by the dozens, their coordination disrupted. HFY's modified weapons proved their worth. The overcharged energy bolts punched through Ravager armor that had stopped standard shots. Human cadets emerged from hiding spots, fired devastating bursts, then vanished again before the machines could target them. But the real surprise was what HFY had built during the night. It looked like a pile of junk from a distance. Up close, it was still a pile of junk, but when she activated it, it sent out a signal that made every Ravager sensor scream. Electromagnetic pulse, modified frequency. HFY explained over the comm as dozens of Ravagers froze mid-step. Won't last long, but it'll confuse them. And confusion was something the Ravagers couldn't handle. Their entire strategy relied on rapid adaptation and learning. When their sensors filled with false information, when their tactical programs couldn't make sense of the data, they hesitated, just for a moment. That moment was enough. Jinho led his squad in a sprint across the valley floor. They weren't following any coalition manual. They were fighting like humans had always fought when outnumbered, and they were fighting dirty. A Ravager turned toward Jinho. Before it could fire, Dongwu hit it with what looked like a bottle filled with liquid and a burning rag. The bottle shattered, and the Ravager was suddenly on fire. Molotov cocktail, Dongwu grinned. Old Earth weapon, real old. The Ravager's programming had nothing in its database about Molotov cocktails. They were too primitive, too inefficient. No advanced military used them. But they worked, and the machines didn't know how to counter them. More surprises followed. Trip wires that sent boulders rolling down the ridge slopes, crushing Ravagers beneath tons of stone. Pit traps that looked natural but dropped machines into spikes made from sharpened local trees. Improvised explosives that used fuel and fertilizer, technology so old it wasn't even in the Ravager threat database. Bora lived up to her reputation for fearlessness. She led a team that got within meters of a walker, close enough to see the heat radiating from its joints. "This is for the arena," she said, and attached magnetic explosives to its leg joints. The walker took 3 more steps before its legs folded and it crashed to the ground. Bora was already running, her team right behind her, as the machine tried and failed to rise. The alien cadets, who had been moments from being overrun, suddenly found themselves with breathing room. And they pushed back with renewed energy, but everyone could see what was happening. The humans weren't just fighting, they were winning. Jin, meanwhile, was fighting a different battle. She'd managed to hack into the Ravager communication network. "They're trying to call for reinforcements," she reported. "I'm sending them false data, making them think the reinforcements already arrived and were destroyed." "Will that work?" Jinho asked, ducking behind cover as energy bolts sizzled past his head. "I have no idea. I'm making this up as I go." That was humanity in a nutshell, Jinho thought, making it up as they went and somehow surviving. The first wave broke after an hour. The Ravagers that could still move retreated from the valley, leaving hundreds of destroyed machines behind. The alien cadets cheered. They'd held. Against impossible odds, they'd actually held. Jinho didn't cheer. He was counting the human casualties. 2 wounded, none dead. Incredibly lucky. He looked at the valley entrance where the Ravagers had disappeared. "They'll be back," he said. Approached him, stepping over destroyed Ravager drones. The commander's armor was scorched and dented. "What was that?" he demanded. "That wasn't coalition doctrine. That wasn't in any manual." "No, sir," Jinho agreed. "That was human doctrine, the kind we developed fighting each other for 10,000 years. It was chaos, it was messy, it was effective," Haywan finished, limping up with a medical kit. "The word you're looking for is effective." Looked at her, then at the destroyed Ravagers, then back at the humans who were already resetting their traps and checking their weapons. "How did you know it would work?" "We didn't," Min said simply. "We just knew standard tactics would definitely fail, so we tried something else." The second wave came 2 hours later. The Ravagers had adapted somewhat. They were more cautious, their formations. But they still came, because machines don't feel fear and they don't question orders. The humans were ready. This time, Jinho had positioned teams to flank the Ravager formation. As the machines advanced carefully through the valley, human cadets emerged from tunnels they dug during the brief respite. The Ravagers found themselves taking fire from behind, something their tactical programs said was impossible given the sensor data. "Sensor data can lie," Jinho had told his people, "so we lied to it." The second wave lasted longer, but the result was the same. The Ravagers broke and retreated, leaving more wreckage behind. The third wave came at dusk. This time the Ravagers used different tactics, tried new approaches, but each time the humans countered with something unexpected. Fire, rocks, traps made from local materials, weapons that shouldn't work but did. And between the waves, while the alien cadets rested, the humans worked. They rebuilt defenses, reset traps, modified more weapons. Bora, despite being exhausted, led teams to create new obstacles using destroyed Ravager parts. "Don't these humans ever sleep?" Jinho heard a cadet ask. "Apparently not," another replied with what might have been respect. By nightfall, Talon Company still held the valley. The alien cadets were looking at the humans differently now, not with mockery or pity but with something else, something that might have been awe. Pulled Jinho aside as the sun set. "Command says we need to hold for another 18 hours. The evacuation is behind schedule." "We'll hold," Jinho said. "You sound confident." "I am confident. We're human. We don't know how to quit." The commander studied him for a long moment. "I owe you an apology. I underestimated your species." "Yes, sir, you did. Everyone does." Jinho smiled tiredly. "Once." As night fell over the valley, the humans prepared for what they knew was coming. The Ravagers had lost 3 waves. They would analyze, adapt, and return stronger. The next assault would be the real test. But as Jinho checked his weapon and looked at his fellow humans, he felt something he hadn't felt since arriving at the academy. He felt proud. They'd proven themselves today. They'd shown the galaxy that humans might be weak and primitive and technologically inferior. But they were also stubborn, creative, and absolutely unwilling to lie down and die. The aliens had laughed at them. They weren't laughing anymore. The night was cold. Jinho sat with his back against a rock trying to stay awake. All around him, his fellow humans worked by the dim light of glow sticks. They'd been fighting for 12 hours straight. Most of them had minor wounds. All of them were exhausted. None of them had stopped. Jin's voice crackled over the comm. "I've got bad news." "Just one thing?" Jinho asked, trying to joke. His voice came out flat. "The Ravagers are gathering for another push, but this time they've changed everything. New formations, new tactics. They've adapted to every trick we used." "Join the conversation. How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour, maybe less. And Commander, the numbers are worse than before. They're sending everything they have." Jinho stood up and stretched. His muscles screamed at him. He'd been awake for over 30 hours. "Then we'd better be ready." He found Haewon working on what was left of their modified weapons. Several had overheated and burned out during the last engagement. She looked up at him with red, tired eyes. "I can maybe get 5 more working," she said. "That's all. We're running out of everything." "Do what you can," Jinho told her. Bora was sitting nearby, wrapping her hands with cloth. They were bleeding from setting traps all day. "We can't win this one," she said quietly. "Can we?" Jinho sat down next to her. "I don't know, maybe not." "So what do we do?" "We fight anyway." She laughed, and it was a bitter sound. "That's the most human answer I've ever heard." Across the valley, Jinho could see the alien cadets. They were preparing too, but differently. They were writing final messages to their families, checking their weapons one last time, making peace with their deaths, following proper coalition protocol for a last stand. The humans were sharpening sticks. Min approached, carrying an armful of branches he'd cut from local trees. "I know this looks stupid," he said, "but if we run out of ammunition, at least we'll have something." "It doesn't look stupid," Jinho replied. "It looks human." As the hour passed, the mood in the valley changed. The alien cadets grew quieter, more resigned. Several were openly crying, which for some species meant different things. Us crystals dimmed to almost black. Us mandibles stopped clicking entirely. But the humans got louder. They started telling jokes. Bad jokes. Terrible jokes. Jin told a story about her first day at Earth's Academy when she'd accidentally locked herself in a supply closet. Dongwu described his grandmother's cooking, which he claimed could be used as a weapon. Sang a song from her childhood, off-key and too loud. Couldn't understand it. "They're about to die," he said to his second-in-command, unnamed. "Why are they laughing?" "I don't know," replied. "I've never seen anything like it." Jinho heard them and walked over. "Commander, can I address the company?" Looked surprised but nodded. "Go ahead." Jinho climbed onto a rock so everyone could see him. Every cadet in the valley turned to look at this human, this member of the species they'd mocked just months ago. "I want to tell you something about humans," Jinho began. "We're not the strongest. We're not the fastest. We're not and our technology is primitive compared to yours. Everything you said about us is true." He paused, looking at each face, human and alien alike. "But there's one thing humans are the best at. We're the best at not giving up. On Earth, our ancestors survived ice ages that should have killed them. They survived plagues that wiped out half their population. They survived wars that destroyed entire continents. And you know what they did after surviving all that? They looked around and said, 'What's next?'" A few humans were nodding now. They knew their history. "Humans reached the top of the food chain on a planet that was actively trying to kill us. We're not apex predators. We're not the biggest or the meanest. We got there because when something knocked us down, we stood back up. Every single time." His voice grew stronger. "The Ravagers are coming. They've adapted to our tactics. They're going to hit us with everything they have. Standard military doctrine says we should prepare to retreat or surrender, but humans don't have a doctrine for that. You know what we do when we're cornered, when there's no way out, when every rational thought says we should quit. He looked directly at. We fight harder. Min stood up. Our ancestors survived ice ages, he said, picking up the thread. You think some toasters with laser guns scare us? Bora stood next. They beat me in the arena. I got back up. They can beat us in this valley. We'll get back up. One by one, the humans stood, and something changed in the valley. The alien cadets who had been preparing to die with dignity started checking their weapons with new purpose. You're insane, a cadet said, but it picked up its weapon anyway. Completely crazy, I agreed. Its crystals brightened slightly. Absolutely suicidal, added. Then he showed his teeth in what might have been a smile. I'm starting to like it. The Ravagers came in darkness. Wave 4. The big one. Sensors showed thousands of machines, supported by walkers and something new flying drones that the valley walls wouldn't stop. They've learned, Jin reported. They're not funneling through the valley anymore. They're surrounding us. Standard doctrine would have been to hold position and hope for rescue. Jinho threw out standard doctrine. We're not waiting for them, he announced. We're going to them. Men, take your combat teams over the walls, hit their rear formations. Dongwu, go with him, cause chaos. Make them think we have more forces than we do. That's suicide, said. No, Min corrected, grabbing his weapons. That's human. The assault teams went over the valley walls like ghosts. Meanwhile, Haewon unveiled her final project. Working with scraps and salvaged Ravager parts, she'd built something that looked like it had been assembled by a child. It's a virus, she explained too. I coded it by studying captured Ravager communication patterns. If I can get close enough to upload it to their network, it'll make them target each other. That's impossible. Ravager code it's adaptive, self-modifying. On a normal timescale, sure, but I'm not trying to permanently hack it. I'm just trying to confuse it for a few minutes, make them see each other as enemies. Will it work? Haewon shrugged. 50-50 chance, maybe less. Those are terrible odds. Better than zero. She picked up the device. I need to get within 100 meters of their main concentration. Who's coming with me? I am, Bora said immediately. Me too, said Min, another human cadet. Watched this conversation with growing amazement. These humans were volunteering for suicide missions like it was nothing special, like it was just Tuesday. The Ravager assault hit at midnight. They came from 3 directions at once, overwhelming the defenses through sheer numbers. The valley floor became a hell of energy, fire, and explosions. A cadet went down screaming. Took a direct hit and didn't get back up. Then Min's team struck from behind the Ravager lines. The machine's sensors went crazy. They were being attacked from the rear, which their programming said was impossible. They started to turn, creating confusion in their formations. That's when Haewon made her run. Jinho watched through his weapon's scope as Bora, Haewon, and Min sprinted toward the thickest concentration of Ravagers. Energy bolts filled the air around them. Min took a hit and went down. Bora grabbed Haewon and kept running. They made it to 90 meters, then 80. Bora was firing with one hand, dragging Haewon with the other. 70 meters, 60. Upload it, Bora screamed. Haewon activated the device. For 3 seconds nothing happened. Then every Ravager in the valley froze. Their weapons swiveled, targeting each other, and they opened fire. The virus worked. Not permanently, but for almost a full minute the Ravagers fought themselves. It was enough. The human and alien cadets pushed forward, taking advantage of the chaos. But the cost was high. Min was dead. Haewon was badly wounded. 3 more humans fell in the push. Dongwu took a hit that should have killed him but somehow kept fighting. His arm was burned, but she switched her weapon to her other hand and kept shooting. The battle became a blur of violence. Jinho stopped thinking tactically and just fought, trusting his instincts, trusting his training, trusting that if he died, he'd die on his feet fighting. At some point, he realized he was fighting back-to-back with. The commander was wounded, one arm hanging useless. But he was still fighting, and he was following Jinho's orders without question. "Not bad for charity cases," roared, his voice full of something that might have been joy. When the sun finally rose, the Ravagers were gone, not retreating, gone, destroyed or scattered. The valley floor was carpeted with broken machines and spent ammunition. Talon Company stood among the wreckage, barely stood, most were wounded. 7 humans were dead along with over 20 alien cadets, but they'd held. Against impossible odds they'd held. Jin's voice, weak with exhaustion, came over the comm. "Evacuation complete. All civilians are off-planet. We did it." Someone started to cheer, but the sound died in their throat. They were too tired, too hurt, too aware of who they'd lost. Jinho sat down heavily. Around him, humans and aliens collapsed where they stood. They'd survived. Somehow, impossibly, they'd survived. And the galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. The rescue ships arrived 6 hours later. Medical teams poured into the valley, and their reactions told the story better than any report could. They stared at the battlefield in silence. Miles of destroyed Ravagers, impossible defensive positions, evidence of tactics that shouldn't have worked. And in the middle of it all, a company of cadets who shouldn't have survived. Jinho was helping load wounded onto stretchers when he saw Commander step off the command ship. The who had called humans primitive walked slowly through the valley, his eyes taking in everything. He stopped at the crater where Bora had dropped the walker. He examined the remains of HFY's improvised virus device. He touched the walls where Min's teams had climbed to reach the high ground. Finally, he approached Jinho. The human cadet's arm was in a sling, his face was burned, and he'd been awake for over 40 hours. But he was still working, still helping, still leading. Opened his mouth to speak, then closed it. He tried again. No words came. For a long moment, the two of them just stood there in the morning light, surrounded by the impossible victory. "I underestimated you," finally said. "Yes, sir," Jinho replied. "Everyone does once." The medical ship took the wounded first. HFY was unconscious but stable. The alien doctors had never seen some of her injuries before because they'd never treated humans in actual combat. They learned quickly. They had to. More humans were coming. Dongwu had lost an eye but was cracking jokes about how it made him look tough. His arm would need reconstruction, but she was already asking when she could get back to training. Min and 6 other humans had died. Their bodies were loaded onto the transport with full military honors, something that had never been given to Academy cadets before. Bora sat in the medical bay, her hands finally bandaged, and watched the alien doctors work. One of them, a named Crystalline 7, stopped beside her. "You ran directly at thousands of enemy combatants," it said. Its translated voice sounded confused. "Why?" "Because someone had to," Bora replied. "But you almost died." "Almost doesn't count." The crystals shifted colors, processing this. "Humans are strange." "Yeah," Bora agreed. "We know." The story spread through the coalition faster than light-speed communications. The first reports were met with disbelief. A company of mostly cadets, including 24 humans, had held against a Ravager extermination force for over 24 hours. Impossible. The data had to be wrong. But the data wasn't wrong. The helmet cameras didn't lie. The destroyed Ravagers were real. And every surviving cadet, human and alien alike, told the same story. The humans had changed everything. In Coalition Military Command, generals who had dismissed humanity as primitive curiosities suddenly wanted reports. What were these guerrilla tactics? Why weren't they in the training manuals? How had cadets developed combat techniques that veteran soldiers hadn't considered? The answer, when they finally understood it, shook the military establishment. Humans hadn't learned these tactics at the academy. They'd brought them from Earth. From 10,000 years of human history spent fighting each other. From a species that had never been the strongest or fastest, so they'd learned to be clever, adaptable, and absolutely unwilling to accept defeat. 1 week after the battle, Jinho stood before the Coalition Council. Behind him stood the surviving humans from Talon Company. They all wore fresh uniforms. The council had offered them medals. Jinho had asked for something else instead. "We want to stay together," he told the assembled leaders of 100 species. "Let us form the first human combat unit. Let us train other humans in what we've learned. Let us show you what humanity can really do." There was a long silence. Finally, a senior council member, an ancient being whose species Jinho didn't recognize, spoke. "You are cadets. You have not completed your training." "Sir, with respect, we just survived something that killed veteran companies. I think we've earned a chance." More silence. "Then, what would you call this unit?" Jinho had discussed this with the others. They all agreed. Talon Company, in honor of everyone who fought in that valley, human and alien alike. The council approved it. The first human-led military unit in the Galactic Coalition was born. Back at the academy, everything changed. The human barracks that had been isolated and mocked became the most visited place on station. Alien cadets wanted to train with humans. They wanted to learn the unconventional tactics. They wanted to understand this species that refused to quit. Promoted for his leadership during the battle, personally requested to be assigned as a human unit advisor. "I thought I knew war," he told Jinho. "Then I watched your species redefine it in 24 hours. I want to learn more." The who had assaulted Bora came to her quarters one evening. She almost didn't let him in. But he stood in her doorway, his head lowered in the gesture of ultimate respect, and he didn't move until she acknowledged him. "I was wrong," As said. "You are not weak, you are not fragile, you are," he struggled for words. "You are terrifying." "Damn right," Bora replied. "I wish to apologize, properly. In my culture, when we wrong someone so deeply, we offer a life debt, if you would accept." "I don't want a life debt," Bora interrupted. "I want you to never underestimate anyone again, human or otherwise. Can you do that?" He thought about it, then nodded. "I can." "Then we're good." Haewon recovered in the medical center and immediately started giving lectures on improvised engineering. Her virus design was being studied by the Coalition's top programmers, who couldn't believe a cadet had coded it in 3 hours under combat conditions. "I didn't have time to make it pretty," she explained. "I just made it work." That became the unofficial motto of human engineering in the Coalition. We just make it work. Min was offered a position training elite combat units. He accepted on the condition that he could stay with Talon Company. "These are my people," he said simply. "I don't leave my people." Jin's communication skills caught the attention of Coalition intelligence. They wanted to recruit her. She turned them down. "I'm staying with Talon Company. We started this together. We finish it together." The memorial service for the fallen was held in the Academy's main hall. 7 humans, 21 aliens, all of them honored as heroes, all of them remembered. The humans had brought Earth customs to the ceremony. They folded flags. They played a piece of music called taps that made even the alien attendees feel the weight of loss. Min's family sent a message from Earth. "We are proud," it read. "Tell the stars that humans don't break. Tell them Min proved it." Standing at attention during the ceremony, Jinho felt the weight of responsibility. These people had died under his command. Because of his plans, his tactics, his decisions. He would carry that weight forever. But he would also carry their memory, and he would make sure their sacrifice meant something. After the ceremony, Jinho found a quiet corner of the station. He looked out at the stars, at the vast galaxy that humanity was just beginning to explore. Somewhere out there were more battles, more challenges, more opportunities to prove what humans could do. Footsteps behind him. He turned to see Min, Haewon, Bora, Jin, and the other surviving humans from Talon Company. They stood together, looking at the same stars. "What are you thinking about?" Haewon asked. "I'm thinking about what comes next," Jinho replied. "Whatever it is," Min said, "we'll face it together." "We'll make mistakes," Jinho warned. "We'll face enemies we're not ready for. Some of us might not survive." "Probably," Bora agreed. "But we're human. That's what we do. We face impossible odds and figure out how to win anyway." 3 months later, Talon Company officially deployed. 50 human soldiers, hand-picked and trained in the tactics that had saved the valley. They were assigned to Coalition Special Operations, given missions that conventional forces couldn't handle. Their reputation preceded them. The species that had been mocked as primitive, the cadets who had been written off as charity cases, the humans who had turned a suicide mission into a victory that military historians were still trying to understand. Other species watched them with new eyes. Respect, certainly, but also something else, a kind of caution, because if humans could do what they did with training that wasn't even complete, what would they be capable of when they reached their full potential? Jinho didn't think about that. He focused on the mission, on his people, on proving every day that the galaxy had made a mistake when they underestimated humanity. Years later, when military historians studied the Battle of Theta 9 Valley, they would call it the turning point. The moment when humanity went from being the weakest member of the coalition to being one of its most valuable assets. The moment when the galaxy learned that humans, despite all their apparent disadvantages, had one advantage that mattered more than any other. They didn't know how to give up. The aliens had laughed at humanity's cadets. They had mocked their weakness, dismissed their potential, and written them off as evolutionary dead ends playing at war. Then the battlefield fell silent. The Ravagers were destroyed, the valley held, the humans stood victorious. And across the galaxy, in 100 species on 1,000 worlds, the laughter stopped. It never started again. In the quiet moments, Jinho sometimes thought about that first day at the academy. The mockery, the dismissal, the certainty in his voice when he called humans primitive and inferior. He thought about Min, who died charging a machine army with nothing but courage and a modified rifle. He thought about Haewon, who built a virus in 3 hours that the Coalition's best programmers said was impossible. He thought about Min, Bora, Jin, and all the others who had looked at death and said, "Not today." Most of all, he thought about what it meant to be human, not the strongest, not the fastest, not the most advanced, but unbreakable in the ways that mattered most. The galaxy had learned its lesson at Theta 9 Valley, and as more humans joined the Coalition, as Talon Company grew from 50 to 500 to 5,000, that lesson echoed through every battle, every mission, every impossible situation where conventional tactics failed. When you're fighting humans, the battle isn't over until humans say it's over. And humans never say it's over. The stars stretched out before Talon Company, full of challenges and dangers and species that still didn't understand what humanity was capable of. But they would learn, just like the Ravagers learned, just like the Academy instructors learned, just like everyone learned eventually. Humans don't break. They bend, they adapt, they endure, they find a way. They always find a way. And in the silence after the laughter, in the quiet after the mockery, humanity's message to the galaxy was clear and simple. We're here, we're not leaving, and we're just getting started.